Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. Today we're diving deep into Rewired, McKinsey's comprehensive guide to outcompeting in the age of digital and AI.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, we're focusing on the key takeaways from the 1 Hour Guide summary. So think of this as like a crash course on how businesses can thrive in a tech-driven world.
It's about more than just surviving, right? It's about really excelling.
Exactly. And Rewired really hammers home this idea that we need to shift our thinking. It's not about one-off digital projects.
It's got to be more continuous, right?
Yeah, it's about constant transformation.
Makes sense. I mean, the world's changing so fast. You
Right.
can't just do a digital makeover and call it a day.
Exactly. So Rewired is saying companies need to integrate tech like AI, data analytics, modern software practices.
Wow.
It's got to be woven into everything they do.
Not just like a side project or something.
No, it has to be part of their DNA.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So where do they even begin with all this? Rewired must have some suggestions, right?
Oh yeah, it all starts with leadership.
Okay, so the people at the top need to be on board.
Big time. The book really stresses that leadership alignment is critical.
Because if the CEO's all about AI, but the rest of the leadership team is stuck in the past,
It's going to be a mess.
total chaos.
Mm.
Rewired actually points out some common traps companies fall into.
Oh, like what?
Getting sidetracked by pet projects or focusing too much on the tech itself.
And forgetting about the people who actually have to use it.
Exactly. It's got to
Yeah.
be human-centered.
Speaking of people, Rewired also dives into the importance of talent.
Oh, yeah. You need the right people to drive this kind of change.
Absolutely. The book highlights the need to attract and keep top digital talent. And not just like the typical tech wizards.
There's got to be more to it, right?
They talk about these distinctive technologists.
Distinctive technologists. So what makes them so special?
They have this deep understanding of both the tech and the business side.
Okay, so they can bridge that gap.
Exactly. And they're the ones who can really turn those technical ideas into actual strategies.
Makes sense. Rewired has any real-world examples of companies doing this well?
Oh yeah, for sure. They talk about Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs, so like a big traditional finance company.
Yep. But they realized they had to change.
To keep up with the times.
They invested heavily in building a huge tech division.
Wow, that's a big commitment.
It was. And it allowed them to develop innovative products, like their online banking platform, Marcus.
That's pretty cool. Any other examples?
They also highlight Spotify.
Spotify. Now that's a company that seems like they've got the digital thing figured out.
They really do.
Yeah.
And it's all about the culture they built.
What's so special about their culture?
They focus on autonomy, innovation, and collaboration.
Sounds like a pretty ideal environment for tech folks.
It is. They have this squad model where small teams own specific features or services.
It's like their own little startups within the company.
Exactly. And that kind of agility and ownership is really appealing.
Makes sense. So it's not just about having the tech skills, it's about creating the right environment.
Totally. Rewired makes it clear that culture is a huge factor in digital transformation.
It's got to be more than just like checking a box and saying we did agile.
Right. They actually talk about this difference between doing agile and being agile.
Being agile, what does that even mean?
It's about embedding agility into the company's DNA. It becomes a mindset that influences everything.
So it's like agile is just how you operate, not just a project management thing.
Exactly. And Rewired says that companies need to move away from those old hierarchical structures.
More like flat structures, right?
Exactly. They need to create these cross-functional teams.
More flexible?
Yeah. They call them pods in the book.
Pods. I'm not familiar with that term.
Imagine like a little mini company within the larger organization.
Oh, okay. Each pod focuses on a specific product or service.
Exactly. And they have a lot of autonomy. They can make decisions quickly and adapt.
That's so different from those slow-moving traditional companies.
It is. And it's so much more efficient in today's fast-paced world.
So we've got leadership talent and this agile operating model. What about the tech itself? What does Rewired have to say about choosing the right tech?
They emphasize technology that enables speed and distributed innovation.
Distributed innovation. Can you unpack that a bit?
It's about creating a tech environment that's flexible and scalable.
Okay, so it can grow with the company.
Yep. And they introduce this concept of decoupled architecture.
Decoupled architecture. Sounds complicated.
Think of it like building a house. Instead of one big structure.
You build it in sections.
Exactly. Modular sections that you can easily assemble and reconfigure.
Like building with Legos.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
So instead of these huge monolithic systems
You have smaller, more manageable components.
that can evolve more easily.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're not stuck with this giant, outdated system.
Right. This approach makes innovation faster and reduces risk.
So decoupled architecture is all about building a tech foundation that's built for speed and flexibility.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And Rewired also talks about these modern engineering practices like DevSecOps and MLOps.
Those are pretty technical terms. Can you break them down?
Sure, DevSecOps is about integrating security into every stage of development.
Makes sense. You don't want to tack it on at the end as an afterthought.
Exactly. And MLOps is a similar concept, but it focuses on making sure AI can be integrated and scaled within an organization.
Okay, so it's about making those AI initiatives work in the real world.
Exactly. And Rewired actually gives examples of companies like Netflix and Airbnb.
Netflix and Airbnb, two companies that have definitely disrupted their industries.
And they've leveraged these practices to really accelerate innovation.
That's inspiring. So we've covered leadership talent, agile operating models, and choosing the right tech. What's next?
The next big piece is data. Rewired talks about this idea of embedding data everywhere.
Embedding data everywhere sounds intense.
It's about recognizing that data is not just some byproduct.
It's valuable.
Exactly. It needs to be treated as a core asset.
And accessible to everyone, right?
Yes. It needs to be accessible and actionable across the entire organization.
So it's not just locked away in some silo.
Right. Rewired talks about building a data-driven culture where data informs every decision.
From the big strategic decisions down to the everyday stuff.
Exactly. But that's a big change for a lot of companies.
Where do they even start?
They need to figure out which data is actually useful and then build a solid data architecture.
So a system that supports data sharing and analysis.
Right. And Rewired also stresses the importance of data governance.
Okay, what's data governance?
It's about ensuring the quality, security, and responsible use of data.
So it's like having rules and guidelines in place.
Exactly. And Rewired gives some really compelling examples of companies using data effectively.
Like who?
Well, they talk about Amazon's recommendation engine.
That's going to be powered by tons of data.
It is. And then there's Walmart. They use data to optimize their massive supply chain.
That's amazing. It's crazy to think how much data is being used behind the scenes.
It really is. Okay, so we've got the team in place. We've got the agile mindset. We're using modern tech, and we're embracing data. What's the final hurdle in this digital transformation journey?
That's a great question. I'd say it's about making sure all this great work gets adopted and scaled across the organization.
Rewired says that's a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Because what good is a brilliant digital solution if no one uses it?
Exactly. So Rewired offers some tips for ensuring successful adoption and scaling.
Like what?
One of the most important things is user-centric design.
Meaning?
If the solution isn't easy to use, people won't adopt it.
No matter how amazing it might be.
Right. It's like that saying, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. But if it's a clunky mousetrap...
Nobody wants it.
Exactly. And along with user-centric design.
There's got to be more to it, right?
Rewired emphasizes the importance of change management.
Makes sense. You can't just throw new tech at people and expect them to figure it out.
You need to bring people along on the journey.
Explain why the changes are happening.
Provide training and support.
Address their concerns.
Exactly. And Rewired shares some really inspiring case studies of companies that have nailed this.
Like who?
Microsoft with their cloud transition.
That was a massive shift for them.
It was. And Slack with their incredibly fast adoption and growth.
Slack definitely seems to have mastered that user-friendly approach.
They really have. And then there's DBS Bank. They've been recognized as a leader in digital banking.
That's impressive. What was their secret?
They really embraced this idea of customer centricity.
They focus on what their customers actually needed.
Exactly. And they made sure their digital tools were super easy to use.
So those are just a few examples of companies that have successfully navigated the challenges of digital transformation.
They are. And Rewired provides a framework and practical steps to help other companies do the same.
Sounds like a valuable resource for anyone going through this process.
It is. Now, before we move on, I want to do a quick recap of what we've learned so far from Rewired.
Okay, let's see if I've been paying attention.
First, digital transformation. It's a journey, not a destination.
Right. It's ongoing.
It requires strong leadership alignment, a focus on building the right talent bench, adopting an agile operating model, embracing modern tech, embedding data everywhere, and ensuring that digital solutions are adopted and scaled effectively.
Phew. That's a lot to remember.
It is. But it's all interconnected.
And crucial for success in the digital age.
Exactly. Now, with those key takeaways in mind, let's move on to the last section of the guide, which focuses on real-world transformation stories.
Sounds interesting. What kind of stories are we talking about?
The one-hour guide highlights the journeys of 3 companies, Freeport McMoran, DBS Bank, and the Lego Group.
Each representing a different industry.
Exactly. And they each face their own unique challenges.
These stories should give us some real-world insights into how these principles can be applied.
Exactly. So let's start with Freeport McMoran, a global mining company. Their story is all about using data to improve their operations.
Mining. That's not exactly the first industry that comes to mind when you think of digital transformation.
I know, right? But Freeport McMoran faced this challenge of optimizing their operations across multiple locations.
Which are often in remote and difficult environments.
Exactly. And they knew they had a ton of data
But they needed to figure out how to actually use it.
to make better decisions.
So how did they do it?
They made a conscious decision to invest in the tech and the expertise needed to build a data-driven culture.
Okay, so they were serious about it.
They implemented AI-powered predictive maintenance tools
To anticipate equipment failures.
and reduce downtime.
Smart.
They also built data analytics platforms to gain insights into their operations.
So they could identify areas for improvement.
Exactly. And their transformation efforts led to significant cost savings and operational improvements.
So even a traditional industry like mining can benefit from embracing data and technology.
Absolutely. It's a great example of what's possible.
Now, what about DBS Bank? We touched on them briefly earlier.
Their transformation journey is all about becoming a digital-first bank
They realized that the banking industry was being disrupted,
by technology.
and they decided to completely change their approach.
They shifted their focus from traditional branches to digital channels.
So mobile apps, online platforms, things like that.
Exactly. And they invested heavily in AI-powered services like chatbots.
That's a huge change for a traditional bank.
It was. But they had strong leadership from their CEO, who was a big champion of the digital agenda.
Okay, so they had the vision at the top.
They did. And they invested in building the necessary digital skills,
Hiring the right people.
adopting an agile operating model.
So they had the vision, the leadership, and the talent.
And it paid off.
Yeah.
DBS Bank is now recognized as one of the world's most innovative banks.
That's amazing. They've really become a digital powerhouse.
They have. It's a great example of what can happen when you embrace change and disrupt yourself before someone else does.
That's a powerful message.
It is. Now, before we dive into the Lego Group's transformation, I want to pause for a second and ask our listeners a question.
Okay, what's the question?
What's resonating with you so far? What insights or takeaways are you finding most valuable?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
You can connect with us on social media or leave a comment on our website.
We always love hearing from our listeners.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to the Lego Group.
Lego. That's an interesting one.
Their story is all about reimagining play in a digital world.
So how did a company built on physical toys adapt to the digital age?
That's the fascinating part. They faced this challenge of staying relevant while the way kids play was changing.
I can see how that would be tricky.
They had to figure out how to bridge that gap between physical and digital play.
So what did they do?
They embraced digital innovation.
But they didn't abandon their core product.
Exactly. They developed digital play experiences like Lego Life.
What's Lego Life?
It's an online platform where kids can share their Lego creations.
Oh, that's cool. Like a social network for Lego fans.
Exactly. They also invested in augmented reality and virtual reality.
Wow. So they're merging the physical and digital worlds.
They are. And it's been incredibly successful. Their digital initiatives have helped them reach a wider audience.
And stay relevant in a changing market.
Exactly. Their story is a reminder that even companies with long histories and strong traditions
They can still embrace digital transformation.
and find ways to evolve while staying true to their core values.
That's inspiring.
It is. Now, these 3 transformation journeys, Freeport McMoran, DBS Bank, and the Lego Group, they offer some really valuable insights.
Into how companies across different industries can apply the principles of Rewired to achieve digital success.
Exactly. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on a section of the guide that adds a personal touch to these ideas.
Oh, you mean the story about Everest Enterprises?
Yes. It's a fictional account, but it does a great job of illustrating how these principles can play out in a real company's journey.
It's like a mini case study.
Exactly. And it follows this company, Everest Enterprises, as they navigate the digital age.
Led by their CEO, Sarah.
Yes. Sarah leads them through creating a transformation roadmap, building a digital team, adopting a new operating model, embracing technology, embedding data, and ultimately transforming into a modern data-driven business.
It's like seeing all these concepts come to life.
It is, and it highlights that even established companies can succeed if they embrace change.
And adapt to the digital age.
Exactly, and it shows how important leadership is in guiding that journey.
Sarah's vision and determination are key to their success.
Absolutely. So whether you're a CEO, a manager, or an individual contributor, the story of Everest Enterprises offers some great lessons.
On how to approach digital transformation.
Exactly. It's a reminder that transformation is possible.
But it takes commitment, collaboration, and a willingness to embrace new ways of working.
Now, Rewired also takes a look at how its framework stacks up against other similar works in the field.
Oh, that's interesting. So it compares itself to other books on digital transformation and AI.
Exactly. It gives a good overview of how Rewired distinguishes itself.
So how is it different?
It emphasizes its comprehensive and practical framework, its focus on AI and data, its organizational approach, and its emphasis on scaling and adoption. It compares itself to books like Digital Transformation by Thomas Siebel, The Lean Startup by Eric Lamarre, Competing in the Age of AI by Marco Iansiti and Karim Lakhani, and Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail.
It's like a curated reading list of the most important books on these topics.
It is, and it helps you understand how Rewired fits into the bigger picture.
It's always good to see different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Rewired doesn't shy away from acknowledging different viewpoints on digital transformation.
So it doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Right. It highlights works that offer alternative approaches to innovation and organizational change.
Okay, so it's about being open to different ideas.
Exactly. And it encourages readers to think critically about these different approaches.
So what are some of these contrasting viewpoints that Rewired mentions?
Well, it dives into Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal.
I've heard of that one.
It advocates for a more decentralized approach to leadership.
Interesting. So it's about empowering teams and breaking down silos.
Exactly. And Rewired acknowledges the value of that.
Especially in today's fast-paced world.
Right. You need to be able to move quickly and adapt.
But Rewired still emphasizes the importance of strong leadership, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in those early stages of transformation.
You need that clear direction and vision to get things moving.
Exactly. Now, another book they mention is The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, Kevin Bear, and George Spafford.
What's that one about?
It highlights the importance of DevOps.
DevOps. Remind me what that is again.
It's about breaking down the barriers between development and operations teams.
Okay, so it's about making those processes more efficient.
Exactly. And it emphasizes automating those processes and fostering a culture of continuous improvement.
So it's about optimizing IT operations.
Which is definitely a crucial part of digital transformation.
But as Rewired points out, it's not the whole story.
Right. Digital transformation needs to involve the entire organization.
Everyone needs to be on board.
Exactly. So while DevOps is important,
It's just one piece of the puzzle.
right, and Rewired takes that broader view.
It's about aligning the business strategy, the culture, and the technology.
Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about being agile and adaptable.
But what about those really groundbreaking innovations, the ones that shake things up?
Oh yeah, Rewired addresses that too. It compares its approach to loon shots by Safi Bakal.
Loon shots. Never heard of that one.
It suggests that those radical innovations often need a different environment to thrive.
Okay, so they need space to breathe.
Exactly. They need room to experiment and iterate without being bogged down by the day-to-day operations.
That makes sense. If you're too focused on the short term, you might miss out on those big breakthroughs.
Exactly. And while Rewired acknowledges that this separation might be necessary sometimes.
It also stresses that those innovations need to be integrated back into the core business.
So you can't just let them operate in a silo forever.
You need a plan to bring those ideas to life and scale them up.
Exactly. And that can be a challenge for large organizations.
They might be good at incremental innovation, but those big leaps can be harder.
Right. Now, Rewired also compares its approach to The Lean Startup by Eric Lamarre.
Oh, yeah, that's a popular one, especially for startups.
It is. And it's all about speed testing and adapting.
The classic build, measure, learn cycle.
Exactly. It encourages you to build a minimum viable product, get it out there quickly, and then keep refining it based on feedback.
So it's a very iterative approach.
Which is great for startups trying to figure out what works.
But Rewired is geared more towards larger companies
Companies that need a more structured approach.
for a bigger transformation.
Exactly. So it's about choosing the right tool for the job.
The lean startup for a nimble startup, Rewired for a large enterprise.
That's a good way to put it. And Rewired makes it clear that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
It's about understanding the different options and choosing what works best for your specific situation.
Exactly. Now, before we move on, I want to point out that Rewired doesn't just talk about frameworks and strategies.
It also includes that story about Everest Enterprises.
Yes, that fictional story really helps to bring all these concepts to life.
It's like taking the theory and seeing how it plays out in a real company.
And it's all led by that dynamic CEO, Sarah.
Sarah's the one who's spearheading their digital transformation.
Exactly. And the story walks you through their entire journey.
Starting with creating a roadmap for their transformation.
Right. They realize they need to build up their digital talent, so they focus on attracting the right people and training their existing workforce.
And they understand that their old way of doing things isn't going to cut it.
So they shift to a more agile operating model.
Empowering smaller teams to move faster.
And they embrace technology, investing in cloud infrastructure, adopting modern engineering practices, using AI and data to make decisions.
But it's not just about implementing the tech.
Right. They also make sure those solutions are actually used.
Adopted throughout the organization.
Sarah and her team understand how important user experience and change management are.
They really put in the effort to make sure their digital initiatives are successful.
The story of Everest Enterprises is a great reminder that digital transformation isn't a one-time project.
It's an ongoing journey.
And it's a journey that takes commitment, strong leadership, and a willingness to change.
Sounds like a valuable lesson for anyone going through this process.
It is. Now, we've talked a lot about the technical side of digital transformation.
But there's another crucial element that Rewired emphasizes.
The human element.
You can't forget about the people.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the technology and the data.
But digital transformation is ultimately about people.
It's about empowering people to use those technologies and adapt to new ways of working.
So how does Rewired address this human element?
It provides practical guidance on how to create a culture of innovation, manage change effectively, and ensure that everyone feels engaged and empowered.
Okay, so it's about bringing people along on the journey.
And making sure they feel supported.
Sounds like a recipe for success.
It is. Now, one of the key concepts that Rewired emphasizes is user-centric design.
Makes sense. If you're introducing new tools and platforms
You need to make sure they're easy to use.
and designed with the user in mind.
Exactly. It's not just about functionality.
It's about making sure the technology fits seamlessly into how people actually work.
Exactly. User-centric design is about understanding your users
Their needs, their workflows.
and creating solutions that really address those needs.
It's about making technology work for people, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And along with user-centric design, Rewired stresses the importance of change management.
Oh, yeah. Change can be tough,
It is. And people often resist it.
especially when it disrupts their familiar routines.
So how can leaders make this transition smoother?
How can they make sure everyone feels supported?
Rewired provides a framework for change management.
What does that framework look like?
It involves clear communication, stakeholder engagement training, and support and getting feedback.
Okay, let's break those down.
First, communication is crucial,
Leaders need to be clear about why these changes are happening.
and how these changes will benefit everyone.
It's not just about sending out an email
Right. It's about having real conversations.
and engaging with everyone,
Exactly. Stakeholder engagement is essential
so everyone feels heard.
and understood.
Yeah.
Now, what about training and support?
People need the skills to adapt
Exactly. Leaders need to provide the necessary training and resources.
and make sure people feel comfortable using the new tools.
Exactly. And finally, there's feedback.
Got to make sure you're on the right track.
Right. Ongoing feedback is vital for making adjustments along the way.
So it's about creating a culture of continuous improvement.
Exactly. So by incorporating these change management principles
Leaders can make the transition smoother,
and minimize resistance,
and they can create an environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Digital transformation is not just about technology.
It's about people,
It's about using technology to empower people.
not replace them,
It's about creating a workplace that's more human-centric
where people feel valued and supported.
and empowered to do their best work.
And Rewired gives organizations the tools to make that happen.
Exactly. So for anyone listening who's thinking about their own digital transformation journey,
What's the one thing you want them to remember?
don't underestimate the importance of communication engagement training and support,
It's about bringing people along on the journey.
and making sure they feel heard, understood, and supported every step of the way.
Well said.
Now, in addition to managing change, Rewired also talks about fostering a culture of innovation.
Oh, yeah. That's crucial for any kind of transformation.
It is. Innovation is what drives progress.
It allows you to adapt, stay ahead, and keep creating value.
And Rewired emphasizes that innovation isn't just about brainstorming ideas.
It's about creating an environment where those ideas can flourish.
Exactly. It's about building a culture that encourages experimentation, embraces risk-taking, and celebrates both successes and failures.
So it's about more than just coming up with new ideas.
It's about creating the right conditions for innovation to thrive.
So how can leaders cultivate that kind of culture?
Rewired offers some suggestions,
Like what?
encouraging collaboration and knowledge sharing.
So people can bounce ideas off each other
Exactly. Empowering teams to experiment and take risks.
without fear of failure.
Right. Providing access to resources and training.
So people have the tools they need to innovate.
Exactly. Recognizing and rewarding innovation.
So people feel appreciated for their contributions.
And celebrating both successes and failures as learning opportunities.
So it's about learning from everything you do,
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where people feel comfortable trying new things.
even if they don't always succeed.
Right. Because failure is just a part of the innovation process.
And it's often where the biggest breakthroughs come from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Rewired provides a framework for building this kind of innovative culture.
Which is essential for digital transformation.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that innovation isn't just about technology.
It's about people.
It's about creating a workplace where people feel empowered to think creatively and share their ideas.
That's a great message.
It is. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
What's that?
Rewired goes beyond just presenting its own framework.
It compares its approach to other influential books.
Exactly. It gives you a good overview of how Rewired fits into the broader landscape of thought leadership on digital transformation and AI.
It does. Rewired dives into Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal,
Right.
which advocates for like a more decentralized approach to leadership.
Okay.
It also mentions the Phoenix Project
Mm-hmm.
by Kevin Bear and George Spafford, which is all about like DevOps and IT-driven transformation.
Okay, so Rewired acknowledges there are other valid approaches,
Uh-huh.
but it wants to make sure you know how it fits in.
Exactly. It's about giving you that full picture
Okay,
and letting you decide what might work best.
right. So let's dig into some of these contrasting viewpoints.
Okay.
You mentioned team of teams.
Yes.
What's the main idea there?
It's all about decentralization.
Okay.
Networked leadership, especially in those fast-changing environments.
Right.
It emphasizes empowering teams, breaking down silos, and building trust.
So kind of moving away from that traditional top-down leadership, more fluid and adaptable,
Precisely.
and Rewired says that's valuable.
Yeah, especially when you need to be responsive.
But it still stresses strong leadership though, right?
Absolutely. Especially in those early stages.
Okay.
You need that direction to get things moving.
Makes sense.
But then as you evolve, that balance might shift
Okay.
between the top down and the bottom up.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, what about the Phoenix Project?
Yeah, you mentioned it focuses on DevOps and IT-driven transformation.
Right. The Phoenix Project really highlights the importance of breaking down those barriers
Okay.
between the dev teams and the ops teams.
Okay.
It's all about automating and that continuous improvement culture.
So optimizing those IT operations and processes,
Uh-huh.
which is definitely a part of digital transformation.
It is, but as Rewired points out, it's not just an IT project.
Right.
It's got to be the whole organization.
Everyone's got to be on board.
Uh-huh.
So DevOps is important,
Yeah,
but it's not the whole story.
exactly. Rewired takes that broader view,
Okay.
aligning the business, the culture, the tech.
Okay, now we've talked about agility and adapting.
Yeah.
What about those groundbreaking innovations, though?
Yeah.
The ones that really shake things up.
Uh-huh.
How does Rewired address that?
Rewired actually compares its approach to loonshots by Safi Bahcall.
Okay.
Now, loonshots suggest that those radical innovations, they need like a different environment,
Okay.
almost like a separate space to thrive.
So they need that room to experiment
Yeah,
without being held back by the day-to-day.
exactly. Protect them from that pressure for like short-term results.
Right. I could see how a big company could accidentally stifle something
Yeah,
if they're not careful.
exactly. And while Rewired acknowledges that that separation might be necessary,
Yeah.
it also emphasizes that eventually they got to be integrated back into the core business.
So it's a balancing act. You
Yeah.
got to foster those ideas, but you need a plan to scale them.
Exactly.
And that's where those big organizations often struggle. Rewired also compares to the Lean Startup by Eric Lamarre,
Right.
which is popular with startups.
Yeah.
How does that compare?
The Lean Startup is all about speed testing, constantly adapting,
Yeah.
building that minimum viable product, getting it out there fast, and then refining based on feedback.
Okay, so it's that iterative approach,
Very quick and responsive.
which is great for startups when they're trying to find their footing.
Right. Rewired, on the other hand, is more for those larger companies
Yeah.
that need like a more structured approach
Right.
for that big transformation.
So it's like choosing the right tool for the job. Lean Startup for the startup.
Yeah.
Rewired for the big company.
Exactly. And Rewired makes it clear there's no one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
It's about understanding those perspectives and then choosing what aligns with your goals.
Right. Now, before we go on,
Yeah.
I want to mention that Rewired includes that story about Everest Enterprises.
Yes. The Everest Enterprises story.
It's a great way to bring all these concepts to life.
It really is. It's like you're seeing it play out in
Yeah.
a real company.
And it's all led by Sarah, that CEO.
Right. Sarah's driving their transformation.
She's the one pushing for it.
She embodies those leadership principles that Rewired talks about.
And the story takes you through their journey,
It does.
starting with creating that roadmap, then building that digital talent.
Right.
They attract the professionals, they train their people.
And then they realize that their old ways aren't working.
They got to change things up.
Yeah, with all the hierarchy and the silos.
Right, so they shift to that more agile model,
Empowering those smaller teams.
and then they embrace the technology,
Right.
cloud infrastructure, DevSecOps, AI data.
They're doing it all.
But it's not just about the tech.
No.
It's about the people using it.
Right. They focus on adoption, making sure it's actually being used.
Sarah and her team are all about the user experience,
And the change management.
making sure that it all works well.
So the story of Everest Enterprises shows that digital transformation is a journey.
It is.
It's not a one-time thing.
It takes commitment,
Leadership
a willingness to change.
and adapt.
Now, throughout our conversation, we've talked a lot about the technical stuff.
Yeah, the data, the processes.
But Rewired doesn't forget about the human side of it.
Right. It emphasizes the importance of the human element. It's easy to get caught up in the tech.
But you got to remember the people.
It's about the people using it, adapting to the new ways of working.
So how does Rewired actually address that human element?
Rewired gives you practical advice on how to build that culture of innovation, manage that change effectively, and make sure everyone feels like they're part of it,
So it's about bringing everyone along on the journey.
and making them feel supported.
And one of the key concepts is user-centric design.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
If you're going to introduce new tools and platforms,
They gotta be easy to use.
they got to be intuitive,
Designed with the user in mind.
not just about how well it functions.
It's gotta fit into how people actually work.
User-centric design is about understanding those users, their needs, their workflows.
And creating solutions that actually address those.
Make the tech work for people.
Not the other way around.
And along with that, Rewired talks about change management.
Right. Because change can be tough.
It is.
Mm.
It's natural to resist it.
Especially when it disrupts how you do things.
So what can leaders do?
How can they make it easier?
Rewired offers a framework:
What does that look like?
communication stakeholder, engagement training, and support feedback.
Okay, lots of moving parts.
But communication is key.
Gotta be clear about why it's happening.
What the vision is, how it will benefit everyone.
Can't just be a memo.
Right. It's got to be a dialogue.
Engaging with people.
Stakeholder engagement is crucial.
So they feel heard.
Understood.
Yeah.
And then there's the training and support piece.
Gotta equip people with those skills.
Make sure they're comfortable with the new tools.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, feedback.
Yeah, gotta make sure you're on track.
Right. Getting that feedback and making adjustments.
It's about that continuous improvement.
So with those change management principles,
You can make that transition smoother
minimize that resistance.
and create that environment where everyone feels empowered.
That's what we want.
Because digital transformation is about people.
Using technology to empower people, not replace them.
Creating a more human-centric workplace.
Where people feel valued and supported.
Rewired helps organizations do that.
It does. So for anyone out there thinking about digital transformation,
What do you want them to remember about the human element?
don't underestimate the importance of that communication,
Yeah.
the engagement, the training, the support,
Bring people along.
Make sure they feel heard and understood every step of the way.
Well said. Now, in addition to managing change,
Yeah.
Rewired also talks about building that culture of innovation.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
Innovation is the engine.
It drives everything forward.
It's what lets you adapt, stay ahead, create value.
And Rewired says it's not just about coming up with ideas.
It's about creating the space for those to flourish.
Building a culture where they can become real.
A culture that embraces experimentation, risk-taking,
Celebrating the success.
and the failures.
So how can leaders do that?
How can they build that?
Rewired has some suggestions.
What are they?
Encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing.
Get those ideas bouncing around
Empower teams to experiment, take risks.
without the fear of failure.
Provide access to resources training.
Give them the tools to innovate.
Recognize and reward innovation.
Make people feel appreciated.
Celebrate the successes and the failures.
It's all about learning,
Create that culture where people feel comfortable trying new things.
even if they don't always work out.
Because failure is part of the process.
It's where those breakthroughs come from.
Rewired gives you the framework to build that culture,
That innovative culture.
which is essential for digital transformation.
It's about people.
Empowering people to be creative.
To share their ideas.
That's a great message.
It really is. And that's at the heart of Rewired.
Now, as we wrap up this section,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to something we mentioned.
What's that?
Rewired doesn't just talk about its framework.
It looks at other influential books, too.
Right. It compares its approach,
To other perspectives.
giving you an overview of how Rewired fits in.
Into that landscape of thought leadership.
So let's look at some of these comparisons. Rewired contrasts with books like Digital Transformation by Thomas Siebel, The Lean Startup, by Eric Ries, Competing in the Age of AI, by Marco Ianciti and Karim Lakhani, and Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail.
Quite a list.
It is. What are some of the key differences?
Rewired really emphasizes a few things. Its framework, the importance of AI and data, its organizational approach, and that emphasis on scaling and adoption.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
How is Rewired's framework different?
Rewired offers this really structured step-by-step guide.
Okay.
Covers everything from the leadership to the talent to the data architecture.
So very practical.
Yeah, it's like a roadmap,
So more holistic compared to some of these other books,
which might focus on a specific aspect.
like just the tech or the innovation,
Rewired wants to give you that complete picture.
that organizational transformation.
Then there's the AI and data.
Right. It's not just about acknowledging they're important.
It's about embedding them into everything,
Treating data as a strategic asset.
fueling that innovation.
So it's not just improving existing processes.
It's about changing how the organization operates.
Fundamentally.
And Rewired gives you those tools to do it.
Okay, you also mentioned that Rewired takes more of an organizational approach.
Not just tech-focused.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, Rewired acknowledges that tech is a key part,
Yeah,
but it's not the whole solution.
right.
It's about building those capabilities.
Developing the right talent.
Strong leadership alignment.
People first, technology second.
Exactly. You can't achieve it with just technology.
Got to have that shift in mindset and culture.
How work gets done.
And you mentioned the emphasis on scaling and adoption.
Right. That's about making sure those digital solutions aren't just adopted,
Yeah.
but also scaled effectively.
Across the whole organization.
Focusing on user-centric design,
Change management.
fostering that culture of innovation,
So you build great solutions, but you got to make sure they're actually used.
integrated into how the organization functions.
And that's often the missing piece.
Yeah,
So these comparisons really help to see how Rewired fits in.
they do. They show its unique perspective and framework.
But Rewired acknowledges there's no single right way.
No magic bullet.
It encourages readers to consider those different perspectives.
And choose the model that works for them.
Right. It's like a toolbox.
You got all the tools.
You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw.
Right. Tool for the job.
And Rewired helps you assess those needs.
Understand the options.
Choose the best approach.
So it gives you that foundation, but then nudges you to explore those other viewpoints.
Tailored to your goals.
Exactly.
Now, Rewired also points out some books with alternative approaches.
Right. Encourage you to think about those different models.
So let's look at some of those contrasting perspectives.
Okay.
We've talked about team of teams,
Right.
decentralized leadership.
Empowering team.
Rewired also mentions the Phoenix Project.
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway there?
The Phoenix Project is all about DevOps.
Right.
Breaking down those silos between dev and ops.
streamlining those processes.
Automating, building that continuous improvement,
So it's really about optimizing those IT operations.
which is a big part of digital transformation.
But as Rewired points out, it's not just an IT thing.
It's got to involve everyone.
A whole organization.
DevOps is important, but it's just a piece.
Right. It's a piece of the puzzle.
Rewired takes that broader view.
The business, the culture, the technology. Now let's talk about those game-changing innovations.
Yeah, the big ones.
The ones that disrupt industries.
How does Rewired approach that?
Rewired compares to Loonshots.
By Safi Bakal.
Loonshots argues that those radical innovations need a different environment
Like their own space.
to thrive where they can grow.
Protected from the demands of the core business.
Exactly.
So they can really flourish.
And Rewired says that might be necessary,
Yeah.
but you got to integrate them eventually.
Bring them back into the core.
So finding that balance,
Nurturing them and then scaling them.
that's where the big organizations can struggle.
Yeah.
Rewired also contrasts with The Lean Startup by Eric Ries,
Yeah.
popular with startups.
It's all about speed.
Testing, adapting,
Build that minimum viable product, get it out there quick, get that feedback.
that iterative approach.
Very agile.
Great for startups finding their way,
But Rewired is more for those bigger companies.
who need that structured roadmap.
For a larger transformation.
So again, right tool for the job.
Lean startup for the startup.
Rewired for the enterprise.
Rewired makes that clear. No one size fits all.
Understand the different perspectives. Choose what works best.
Align with your goals.
These comparisons give us a better understanding.
They do. They show how Rewired fits in.
Highlights its unique perspective.
Robust framework.
But Rewired says there's no single right answer.
No.
Think about the different approaches.
Choose what suits you.
Your organization.
Your needs.
Have that broad understanding be open.
Now I want to talk about something that's often overlooked.
What's that?
The power of storytelling. Oh yeah, storytelling can be really powerful.
Especially in the context of change transformation.
Why is that?
Stories connect with people.
On an emotional level,
They help us understand the why.
the reason for the change.
Make it relatable. Make it inspiring.
So it's not just about the facts and figures
It's about that narrative.
that people connect with.
And Rewired gives examples.
Of companies using storytelling.
Like Everest Enterprises.
Yeah.
That fictional narrative.
Yeah.
Bringing those principles to life.
Making them engaging.
And they talk about DBS Bank.
Yeah.
Using storytelling to communicate their vision.
Inspire their employees.
So storytelling can be a powerful tool.
It can. For those leaders guiding their organizations,
Think about how you can use storytelling.
share your vision, inspire your teams.
Digital transformation is a journey,
It is.
not a destination.
It's about learning,
Adapting. Approach it
Adapting.
with curiosity.
collaboration.
A willingness to explore new possibilities.
Now, as we wrap up this part of our dive into Rewired, I want to leave our listeners with a question.
What's one small step you can take today
To start applying these principles,
in your own work or your own life
maybe read an article
about a company that's done this well,
or have a conversation with your team.
about embracing agility and innovation?
Just start somewhere.
Take that first step
It doesn't have to be huge,
and remember it's a journey.
not a destination.
Continuously learning, adapting, improving.
It's about giving you a well-rounded view of all the options out there and letting you decide what might be the best fit for you.
Right, so you've got that foundation, but then you can tailor it to your own specific situation.
Exactly.
And speaking of different approaches to innovation, Rewired contrasts its own framework with Digital Transformation by Thomas Siebel, The Lean Startup, by Eric Ries, Competing in the Age of AI, by Marco Ianciti and Karim Lakhani, and Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail.
It's like a little reading list of some key books in the field.
Yeah, it helps you understand where Rewired fits into the broader conversation.
So how does Rewired stand out?
Well, it emphasizes a few key things.
Like what?
It stresses its comprehensive and practical framework, the importance of AI and data, an organizational approach, and its strong emphasis on scaling and adoption.
Okay, a lot to unpack there.
Let's start with the framework. How is Rewired's framework different from the others?
Rewired offers a very structured, step-by-step guide to digital transformation. It covers everything from leadership alignment to talent development to operating models to data architecture. It's very practical, a real roadmap for leaders.
So it's more holistic than some of the others.
Yeah, some of those might just focus on one aspect, like the tech or the innovation,
But Rewired wants to give you that big picture view.
the whole organizational transformation.
And then there's that focus on AI and data.
Right. It's not just acknowledging that they're important.
It's about baking them into everything you do,
Treating data as a strategic asset.
using it to fuel that innovation, boost efficiency, get those deeper insights.
So it's not just about making things a little bit better.
It's about fundamentally changing how you operate.
And Rewired gives you those tools and frameworks to do it.
You also mentioned that Rewired takes an organizational approach.
Not just tech-centric.
Can you say more about that?
Rewired recognizes that while technology is essential, it's not the whole answer.
Right.
It emphasizes the importance of building those internal capabilities, developing the right talent, ensuring strong leadership.
So people first, technology second.
Exactly. Digital transformation can't be achieved solely through technology.
It requires a shift in mindset, culture, and ways of working. And you mentioned Rewired's focus on scaling and adoption.
That's all about ensuring those digital solutions aren't just adopted.
But they're also scaled across the entire organization.
It emphasizes user-centric design change management, fostering that culture of innovation.
So it's not enough to just build it,
You have to make sure people use it.
and that it's integrated into everything the organization does.
That's often where things fall apart.
So these comparisons really help us see where Rewired fits in.
They highlight its unique perspective and framework.
But Rewired acknowledges there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
It encourages you to consider those different viewpoints and choose the model that works best for you.
Your organization, your needs, your context.
Have that broad understanding and be open to those different ideas.
Now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something that often gets overlooked in the excitement of digital transformation, the importance of storytelling.
That's a great point. Storytelling is so powerful, especially when we're talking about change.
Why is that?
Stories connect with us on an emotional level. They help us make sense of why things are changing. They make it more relatable, more inspiring.
So it's not just about presenting the facts and figures.
It's about creating a narrative that people can connect with.
And Rewired gives some great examples of companies that have used storytelling effectively during their digital transformations.
Like the story of Everest Enterprises.
Exactly. That fictional narrative brings those principles to life.
It makes them more engaging.
And they talk about companies like DBS Bank.
Using storytelling to communicate their vision for the future and really get their employees excited about it.
So storytelling can be a really powerful tool for leaders who are trying to guide their organizations through these changes.
Absolutely. It helps bring people together, inspire them, and help them understand why this transformation is important.
So as you embark on your own digital transformation journeys, think about how you can use storytelling.
Share your vision, get people excited about what's possible.
Because digital transformation is a journey. It's about constant learning, adapting, and improving.
And it's about approaching it with that sense of curiosity, a willingness to collaborate, and the excitement of exploring new possibilities.
Thank you for joining us today. Visit the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights by Anil Nathu.